Hello and welcome back to my channel. Thanks for joining us today. We're excited to have you. On the agenda for today, we are obviously talking about 24 books that I have decided I must read in 2024. Before we get into this though, let's have a quick chat kind of about what my channel is going to look like and my reading plans for the year. I recently went through and inventoried my physical shelves of books that I own in my home, and I have about 80 books on my shelves out of like 400 that I haven't read. So that's about a fourth of the books that I own that I haven't read. So this year, my primary goal is to read those books. Now, this is probably going to make my channel less relevant because realistically, the world that we live in today puts a really high standard on new publishing, and I love that. I love that for the authors that are publishing new things. But it also kind of seems, at least to me, like once a book has been out for more than a year, it is no longer relevant. So I am okay with that. I am not going to buy any books at all in 2024. Hello. You're making me have a hard time right now. The camera loves Gigi. There we go. I think I got the lock on my face. Anyway, I'm not going to be buying any new books in 2024. I will try to keep my channel at least somewhat refreshing and trying my best to review new books as well. I'll just get them from my library, audiobooks, ebooks, whatever. This does not include my birthday. I asked for a lot of books for Christmas. For my birthday, I'm sure I will ask for more books as well. But personally, I am not going to be spending a single dollar on any new books. And I really just want to prioritize reading the books on my shelves that I have not read. This is problematic right now. My goal is to have shelves in my home that reflect books I love. And while obviously every book on my shelves that I haven't read yet, I hope that I'm going to love, there's just no guarantee. So I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is I'm going to be reading backlist titles only, physically. So I'm really going to push myself this year and try to read all 80 of those titles. But out of those titles, I have picked 24 books that I absolutely must most definitely read. I'm going to try to keep this brief because obviously 24 books is kind of a lot to talk about in a video. And some of them I don't really know a ton about in the first place. So I have my little list here and I have like one sentence about what they're about in case I don't know. So I'm quite sorry if I'm not pitching these in a way that's appealing to you. I don't think that this video is going to be really great about me inspiring you to read things or me drawing your interest to new books that are coming out, but I think that this video will hold me accountable throughout my year of really trying to push me to reach my goal. So if you're ready, let's get started. I guess Gigi's just gonna be in the whole thing with us. Hopefully she doesn't get back on my lap. I don't know if I can handle that. Number one is Night Film by Marisha Pessl. This is a mixed media format. I believe it's kind of a mystery situation. It's very critically acclaimed and a lot of people love it, and it's been on my shelf since I was in high school. So we're going on a good long while now. And I would like to read it as soon as possible because it's a fat book and it's taken up a lot of space on my shelves and it needs to get off. Next, I want to read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I actually low-key have no idea what this book is about. I know that it won like a billion trillion awards and it was read by like a million trillion billion people when it came out. I believe it came out last year, maybe it was 2 years ago now. It won like the Book of the Month, Best Book of the Year. I'm pretty sure it won a Goodreads Choice Award. It won some like actual literary acclaimed awards as well. And I have it on my shelf, so I'm gonna read that. Next is The Mothers by Brit Bennett. This came out, I believe, like over 5 years ago maybe, and it's been on my shelf just about that long. I remember when Brit Bennett was like all the rage and everyone was loving her work, and I was like, oh my gosh, this like literary novel really appeals to me. I'm gonna read it. So I bought it, and then guess what? I didn't read it. Okay, next is Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ng. Again, I'm sorry, but I really don't know what this one's about either. I think it's kind of pitched as a thriller, but it's not really a thriller. Celeste Ng is one of my favorite authors. I've given both of her other works 5 stars. They are wonderful. They're in probably my like top 10 best books ever, and I quite love her a lot. So I asked for this for my birthday, I believe last year. My grandmother, who is wonderful, dutifully bought it for me, as she does all of the books I ask her for. It's sitting there waiting, and I've heard kind of mixed things about it, which I think is why I've been putting it off. But it is something that I definitely want to prioritize and get to this year. Okay, next, this might come as a shock to y'all. I got this book when I was probably like a freshman in high school, I think. Red Queen. Okay, this is a series. I don't want to read the whole series, at least I don't think I do. But I got the first book when those like dystopian or high fantasy books were like really in, and I've heard that this is like really tropey, and I just never got around to it because obviously my reading tastes have changed a lot in the last 8 years of my life. Eight years? Yeah. So I never got around to it, and while it's not really my taste anymore, I still want to read it. Like, I just want to be part of the fan club that has read this, even if I myself am not going to end up being a fan. This is a classic, like, high fantasy, girly, not like other girls, finds herself in this royal court. She has a magical type of blood that she's not supposed to have, and she's gonna save the world with it. Pretty tropey, but something I'm excited to get into. Next is Migrations, which is, I believe, just kind of a quiet literary fiction novel about a woman who is taking an adventure into, I believe she's going to the Arctic Circle, and she's going to find herself through nature, and it just sounds beautiful. And I know that everyone that I've ever heard talk about it says it's amazing. So next is Four Treasures of the Sky, which I actually read about half of earlier this year. I did not DNF it because I didn't like it. I started reading it as an audiobook because I just needed something to like fill a day when I was running errands. So I found that, put it on. It was beautifully written. The story was so good, but then my audiobook hold ran out and I just didn't renew it. But then I found it at the bookstore a week later and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna buy the book. And then when I have time, I'll read it. And that was like 6 months ago, and I haven't read it. This is about a girl who, and again, I read this like 6 months ago, so I don't remember a ton. A girl who somehow gets like exiled from wherever it is that she is staying. I don't know if she's orphaned or if she decides to run away. I don't really remember. She starts taking calligraphy lessons while being an orphan, and she's learning a lot about herself and the world, and I believe it's in Chinese history, and she's really coming of age, and it's kind of a glimpses of slice of life, and it was really beautiful. I'm sure that it will make me cry when I get around to it. Next is Ask Again Yes. Very similar situation to Four Treasures of the Sky. I got this book 2 or 3 years ago, and I started reading it. And something, I think probably just me going back to school, because that always used to interrupt my reading plans. I would like have my month off and then I would read a whole bunch of stuff, and then classes would start and I would have to drive to the city every day to go to class, and then I just would give up. But I started reading this. Again, it's just a regular like literary contemporary vibes story. We're following 2 families, and both of them have their own issues. There's one that's like an Irish family, and then another that I'm not sure. Anyway, they have their own things going on, and then like intertwined. They're neighbors. They have their own thing going on with each other as well. Again, it was really beautifully written. I was really enjoying myself. Just circumstances prevented me from finishing it, and then I just never picked it back up. So that is a must read for this year. Next is As the Wicked Watch by Tamron Hall. I grew up watching like Investigation Discovery. Tamron Hall is the host of like 3 or 4 different shows spanning the last 2 decades on there, and she has written a thriller, and I haven't heard anyone talk about it. But I'm very interested in it, and I actually won a copy of it in a giveaway, and it's been sitting on my shelf ever since because it just so happened to again be like in the midst of my finals week or last semester of school, and I just didn't read it. I think it's just a classic thriller, but I'm excited to see. We're following a journalist there's a body or multiple bodies. I also believe that there's a detective perspective in here, although I'm not 100% sure on that. Basically, they're gonna solve this mystery. It's gonna be great. Next is Roxy, and let's backtrack for 5 seconds and talk about Scythe, which is my favorite young adult series probably ever. I consumed that series like crazy, and something about his writing is just wonderful. He came out with Roxy, I think 2 years ago, and I was immediately interested. Okay, I had to pull it off the shelf because I was trying to explain it and I was butchering it, and so I just got it out. Let me just read the synopsis to you, okay? Above our world is a toxic wonderland where the party has raged for centuries. Human know partygoers simply as narcotics, opioids, and drugs, but here they are malevolent gods toying with the fates of mortals. Doesn't that sound interesting? Like, what an iconic idea. The dust jacket to me looks more young adulty, but I don't know if drugs are like the personification of drugs is a young adult topic or not. I don't know. Anyway, sounds super interesting. Loved the Scythe series, really love the writing, so this seemed like a great fit for me. Okay, next is Lake's Edge. This is a book that I loved the cover of, and it was in a couple book boxes, and it's definitely like this dark fantasy story about this girly who's not like other girls that's gonna go and she's gonna save the world. Like I said, this is not me talking about books in an educated way in this video. This is me holding myself accountable to reading these things, so it won't hurt my feelings if you click out of this video because I know that I am explaining all of these quite terribly. But honestly, look at the cover of Lake's Edge. It's gorgeous. Next is Big Little Lies. Am I getting myself canceled by saying that I have not read this? Because I haven't. And I really, really, really want to watch the TV show, or is it a movie? Regardless, I really want to watch the cinematic portrayal of this book, but I don't want it to spoil the twist that's going to happen in there. So I really want to get to that. Obviously, everyone loves it. Again, a like beloved modern classic that everyone is just touched by. So I definitely want to get to that. It's a classic Liane Moriarty. We got lots of characters. They all have their own little secrets. Slow burn, usually just leading up to like 1 or 2 big plot twists. And I'm curious. I have to know the hype. Next is The Host by Stephenie Meyer. This I have tried to read probably about 12 times, and it's not because it's bad. Such a creative, iconic concept, but every time it's, okay, back up. 1, it is so long. I don't know if you've ever looked at that book, but it is like this thick. It's like 3 inches thick, okay? With tiny, tiny little words on the page, but the concept is so interesting. I don't know if The Host was written before or after Twilight. I think it was written after. I think it came out very shortly after the last book in the Twilight series, but again, it's not one that I hear mentioned or talked about a lot, and I think it's mostly because it is a standalone novel, which is encouraging. Very hard to explain. Dystopian world, there is like an alien type creature inhabiting a host body, and they have kind of conflicting perspectives going on, and they are trying to solve kind of a little bit of a mystery, but we're also, as a reader, trying to figure out like just what the heck is going on with this situation. I really want to drive myself to finish it because I like it. I like what I've read of it. I think the farthest I've got was like 200 pages in, which is like this tiny little dent in this, I don't know, like 800-page book, but I really just want to motivate myself to finish that. Okay, next is Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. This is a horror. It's about a kid who goes in the woods, and there's some weird things going on, some horrific things going on, and creepy little kids terrify me. I know that when I am in the mood to pick up a horror, this is going to be the next one that I go to. I've just been avoiding it thus far because it is, again, really, really chunky, and I just need to get over my fear of big books this year because it is not doing me any favors to let them pile up on my shelves. Okay, next is The Winter Garden by Kristen Hanna. This is, I think, probably one of her least popular historical fictions, but it still has a really, really high rating on Goodreads. There's a familial relationship. I believe the mother is telling the daughter the story, and I'm sure it's very, very sad. Next is The Downstairs Girl, which is a young adult historical fiction. I really like historical fiction. I just like never feel a push to read it. So again, that's why I'm loading up this list with historical fiction, because I love it when I read it, but I'm never inspired to read it. The Downstairs Girl is set in New Orleans in, I believe, the early 1900s, maybe the late 1800s. This girly pop it's kind of like a Gossip Girl, but like way back then type situation, where there is this anonymous author who's like spewing gossip and like saying all of these things that women were not supposed to say at the time, and it ends up being this girl, I'm fairly certain, from, I mean, the one that we're following the perspective of. At least that's what I'm under the impression of. Obviously I haven't read it. If I just like accidentally spoiled something, I'm sorry, but that's what I've been led to believe about this. And it just sounds really interesting. I think young adult historical fiction is probably my favorite kind of young adult to read, just because it kind of like dumbs it down a little bit for me, and I'm like kind of stupid. So anyway, next is Vesper Time by Margaret Rogerson. This is the same author as A Sorcery of Thorns, I think that's what it was called. This is another standalone fantasy, but this one I think is a lot darker than her previous work, although I haven't heard anyone talk about Vespertine, even though it came out after A Sorcery of Thorns. I really hope that's what it's called, because I don't know if it is. Basically, we're following this woman who is essentially like in charge of keeping the souls where they're supposed to go after people die, so that they don't like get angry and cause death or other bad things. But then these like zombie type creatures are souls that are like not transported where they're supposed to go, and then she has to like figure out what's going on with that and like get them out of there. That's probably the worst plot synopsis I've ever given, but I think you get the vibes. I think it'll be fun. Next is The Moon and the Stars and Madame Barova. This is another book that I got from my bookstore on my birthday. It is kind of this intertwining story about two women from two different time periods. Madame Barova, I'm assuming, is going to be the fortune teller in the like older timeline, and then we have like a modern day timeline, and their stories are going to intertwine, and there's going to be secrets and many things to figure out. And I just love a good like lighthearted fortune teller tarot card type story. I just think that that is a fun time. Okay, next is The Magnolia Palace, which is like a historical fiction murder mystery situation. I think there's a murder, either that or there's like a theft. There's like a big grand theft palace happening in this book. That's all I really know about it. I got this as a book of the month pick actually, and it's just something that I keep not reading, so we're gonna force myself to read it. Next is In a Dark Dark Wood by Ruth Ware. I don't really know anything about this other than it's set in the woods in a house, and there's probably a murder or a soon-to-be murder or a body or some type of mystery. Next is Burn Town by Jennifer McMahon. This is the last backlist title I have of Jennifer McMahon before I have read every single book that she's written. I love her horror. It's very quiet. I don't give a ton of her books 5 stars, but most of them sit at a 4 stars. And because I know that I like it, I just keep picking her up. I'm pretty sure that this one is quite an old backlist title on her list. I hadn't even heard of it until I saw it at my bookstore. Never heard of it, but I went on Goodreads and there it was. So anyway, I have that. I want to finish that. I want to finish her backlist, and then I want to move on and find another author to read the complete backlist of. This is Emma by Jane Austen. I think everyone knows what this is about. Emma is a little matchmaker queen way back in the olden days, and she's gonna find some love and deal with women's problems at the same time. We love a good Jane Austen. Next is I Love You But I've Chosen Darkness. Again, I don't really know anything about this, but I've seen the cover popping up a lot all over the place, and I'm very, very intrigued. It's also pretty short, and I think that this will be something easy for me to get through rather quickly. I'm not gonna go get the book and tell you what it's about because we're almost done with this video, and I just don't have the desire to stand up and walk all the way over to my shelves and then come back over here. My last book is actually sitting right here, and look how beautiful this is. My grandpa loves Sherlock Holmes. Me and my grandpa both are into this like kind of kitschy cozy mystery. It looks really thick, but it's actually probably in like a normal sized book, only like 300 pages. So I think I can cruise through this, and then me and my grandpa can have something new to talk about, and I'm really excited about it. With that said, those are the 24 books that I am forcing myself to read in 2024. It sounds like I don't want to read them. I do. I want to read all the books on my shelves. But out of the 80-ish, and after Christmas it's going to be like 90-ish books on my TBR, those are the ones that I really, really, really want to push myself to read this year. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Happy New Year, and I'll see you in another video soon. Bye!